Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Dynamics Corner, the podcast where we dive deep into all things Microsoft Dynamics. Whether you're a seasoned expert or just starting your journey into the world of Dynamics 365, this is your place to gain insights, learn new tricks, and hear from industry experts, and of course, what it takes to build a community. I'm your co-host, Kris.
And this is Brad. This episode was recorded on August 22nd, 2024. Kris, what it takes to build a community. Today, we had the opportunity to have a behind-the-scenes conversation with John Siefert about DCI and all of their community initiatives and conferences.
How you doing, fellas?
I'm doing
Good,
doing well.
Yeah.
How's my long lost brother doing?
You know, I am hanging in. I'm hanging in. I just we spent the day in San Diego yesterday and checking out
Nice.
the location for the AI Copilot Summit that we're doing in March. And golly, fellas, this place is pretty sweet, right? Have you ever heard of the Torrey Pines Golf Course? I'm a shit golfer, right? But the Torrey Pines Golf Course. So it's on that spot, and you've got like the venue is here. It's called the Hilton Torrey Pines or whatever. Then you got the golf course here. Then the ocean's right in front of that. So I go up to the room that's like going to be the suite that we'll do a bunch of meetings. It's like the Hotshot Ding Dong suite, you know. And so you go up there, and you just got this like sick view, man. It's bananas. And so I told everybody, you know, and we were like recording stuff for our digital summit while we were there and all that. But I told everybody, why don't you guys just roll downstairs, leave me a six-pack up here, and come up and get me in a couple hours?
Sounds like this is...
So has that been announced yet? That's going to be where it is?
Yeah, it's actually on the digital summit that's taking place today. So you know, it's going on right now. But it's about 3-hour digital summit that's called AI Copilot Digital Summit. It's pretty awesome. It's like 1,000 folks have read or tuned into it and that kind of thing today, which is pretty sweet. But we actually announced it about a week ago just on the website with no fanfare, and then today kind of announcing it officially on the digital summit that we're hosting by the same name, right? So yeah, it's going. It's pretty cool.
Excellent.
Perfect.
Excellent.
We won't have to bleep it then. We'll just
No, we don't bleep much. Thankfully, we have a lot of things that I'd like to talk with you about. And I know I'd probably be able to talk to you for hours, so we'll have to keep an eye on everyone's schedule. But before we jump into the conversation, would you mind telling everyone a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So my name's John. Let's see. I'm kind of a tech geek, right? I've been in the tech category for about 30 years. Started my career in research, then went over and worked for a company called CMP, which then became a company called UBM, and working on something called Information Week, which was a magazine, website, and events and those sorts of things for the enterprise technology category. Did that for 15 years. Started as a sales guy. It was kind of funny, reluctantly, because I never thought I was a sales guy, and kind of got moved into this sales guy job. And somebody told me to, just get over yourself and be a sales guy. And I'm like, okay, and said I'll give it a shot, and ended up realizing, boy, you could be in sales and still be able to kind of really do neat stuff, right? Be able to come up with neat ideas, work with people. I kind of fell in love with the idea of co-creation at a young age, of working with people and trying to figure out what the problems were and finding ways to solve them and that kind of thing. So I did that for about 15 years. Bailed out of there in 2010. At that time, I was running about $120 million business for those folks globally. So through the magazine and the events and all that. Then took my first CEO job in 2010 for a company called Virgo. Ran that for 3.5 years. That company got acquired by an organization called Informa, which is a pretty large event and media and that sort of thing company based out of the UK. So, with them for a couple of years running a global business. And then I hung stuff up because I thought I was just going to retire and whatever, then remembered what a crappy golfer I am, right? And said, well, that's not going to be a cool thing. And then kind of drove my wife and my kids a little bananas because I was around the house too much. And so I did a couple of startups during that time. And all of a sudden, COVID came around there in 2020 or what have you. And I learned about this company called Dynamic Communities, fell in love with the idea of it, of being this kind of platform that could connect like-minded people together to decentralize intelligence and help each other out all around the Microsoft Business Applications category. And I said, that sounds like a great job, right? And a great premise and a great idea. And then got here in 2020. We took the CEO job, which it's 3 letters, right? It just means maybe I get up a little bit earlier in the morning to wash the windows, right? It's not some fancy dancy kind of thing. And I've been here since and kind of went through a pretty big sort of what we call stabilization of our the really big event that we do called Community Summit North America in the fall. And once we get that thing pretty well stabilized, then started to create what we call the DCI Double Down plan, right? Which is just essentially means, hey, we're going to keep Community Summit in the center of our universe, and then everything we do is going to revolve around that. So some new face-to-face events and some digital programming and that kind of thing to help folks in the community out. So that's kind of
you came the 2020, man, you were given a tough card. You were dealt with a tough deck of cards there.
Kris, one might call that a certain type of sandwich, that you're handed, right? And it's not a ham and cheese sandwich, right? So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. There's I still got a bunch of I think I got some PTSD from it, quite frankly, from that first year of being here. And no disrespect to people that were here before me, right, or any of that sort of thing, but it was just a very tough time because this company, while it had the local user group stuff and those sorts of things, couldn't do any local user group things because of COVID, right? And then the big thing that the company had done for godly 15, 16 years at that time, was Community Summit North America. And that event couldn't be floored in 2020. And for anybody who knows anything about like the way event stuff runs, you actually spend the majority of your money as the event producer before the event actually happens, right? Because you're spending it on food and beverage, You're spending it on the location, you're spending it on the hotel blocks, you're spending it on all those sorts of things. So a ton of the money that sponsors and attendees and those sorts of things had invested in the 2020 event, that had already been spent. In fact, by the time I got here, it was already spent. And so when we couldn't floor the event, the environment was pretty tough because that meant that a whole bunch of the money that would have been used to run the event, we couldn't get back because we had already spent it, right? Mm-hmm. So my first job here, Kris, to the point of the first bite out of that sandwich I had to take, right, was me actually going in and doing a pretty big round of financing for this organization so that I could pay the community back. And that's something I kept under wraps for a long time because I didn't want to make anybody feel guilty about that kind of stuff that worked here before me or what have you. But I had to go do a pretty big round of financing, and about 85% of that financing raise that I did for the company literally paid the community back. So it was paying all of the attendees back who had bought their tickets and all the sponsors that had invested to be a part of the event. And that was what I meant by stabilization, right? We had to kind of stabilize all of this stuff before we could start to try to do other neat things. So it was I had doing this stuff a little while. One of the toughest things I've ever actually done, and I've kind of been a part of some things that were pretty tough, right? That was a pretty tough one.
Yeah, I mean, what a turnaround though, because now everyone's back and we're super excited. So well done.
It is last year. Yeah. Last year was a great show or a great conference. I'm horrible with names and words sometimes. It's and this year it even looks like it's going to be significantly larger with more content, more tracks, more attendees, more presenters. So there's a lot of information there. You had mentioned DCI, and so you talked about DCI works on, you have the Summit North America conference. You're working on the AI conference, and what other conferences do you have your hands in?
Thanks, Brad, and thanks for the kind words there about Community Summit this year. I mean, we're been a team effort, right, with the gang at Dynamic Communities, the community, the programming committees, as they say, it takes a village, right? In our case, it takes a community, right, to build a community event. So that's the kind of magic of where we are right now on that side. But so we came up with this premise a little while ago of saying, boy, once we get Community Summit North America, it was never going to be exactly what it was before COVID, right? And most businesses aren't exactly what they were before COVID. So we said, hey, how do we adapt Community Summit to really make it super relevant for today, right? For today's users, for today's partners, for where Microsoft is in their evolution, right? All of those sorts of things. How do we make it as relevant as we can make it in today's world? And to the point of 2023 going pretty well there in Charlotte, we said, okay, now I think we've finally got this thing to a nice stable environment to where we can start to build around it. What I didn't want to do was build on top of Community Summit North America necessarily, because what the community had told me was, hey, we really want to keep a Dynamics and Power Platform first event, right? We don't want this to become, an AI event or a Fabric event or some other sort of popular thing that's going on out there. Really wanted to make sure we kept it a Dynamics first event and a Power Platform first event. And then, of course, AI is going to be woven through it in content programming and sessions and all that sort of thing, or academy classes. But what we want to do is say, okay, we're going to keep that fall event, our Dynamics and Power Platform first event for the entire community. Then what we want to do is say, what are the parts that are maybe adjunct or missing on top of that. So last year, for the first time, we started to do pre-conferences. They could have been done before I got here, but since I've been here, that was the first time we had done them. And we did an AI pre-conference and a partner pre-conference at Summit North America last year. And that was kind of a way to say, hey, folks were sort of saying they wanted some of that type of thing. So we said, hey, let's give it a shot within the context of a pre-conference. That way it's not too risky for the attendees, not too risky for anybody who wanted to sponsor it, not too risky for us to try to build it. And both of them did pretty darn good. So what we decided to do was say, boy, let's take that partner pre-conference strategy. Let's collaborate with the gang at Microsoft, some strategic advisors in the market and that sort of thing, like at partners, say, boy, could we take that and make it a standalone event? So this year over the summer, we launched the BizApps Partner Summit in Bellevue, Washington, collaborated with Microsoft to build it out, and some great partners and the like to build this thing out. It has a pretty good hit, right? That did pretty well. I think it filled a nice void for folks that maybe was something that was missing a little bit, right? So that's another one of our events that we're doing. Kris Woods, there are about 320 or so partners there, something like that, I think.
Yeah, good turnout.
Yeah.
Great turnout.
And so thank you. And so that went pretty darn good. And we did it as what we called a 24-hour immersion at the beginning of fiscal year 25 for Microsoft. So instead of saying, hey, you got to come invest, 3 days or 4 days and go to bajillion sessions or anything like that, we said, we're going to make this a 24-hour immersion, and we're going to make it like complete opposite of what you'd have at like a Summit North America, right? Where you've got, a bunch of sessions and all kinds of different programming. We're going to have one track that's going to run the entire time with a bunch of people that play with sharp tools inside Microsoft coming in and telling their stories from product, from field, from programs and that type of thing. And so that went pretty darn good. So we're going to do that one again next year. But that's our sort of partner first event, right? That we create. And then here in the spring of 2025, Brad, as you mentioned, we're going to do the AI Copilot Summit North America, which will be at the Torrey Pines Hilton in San Diego. Pretty nice place, right?
Sounds good. That's a great location. Anywhere in San Diego.
I mean, I don't know why we all don't live in San Diego, man. Right? Like, I'm over there. The weather's like ridiculous. The views are beautiful.
Yeah.
It might have to do with it being in California. I won't go down that road, but I think being in California is a good deterrent to a lot of people.
That maybe should be in a different podcast, right?
That will definitely be a different podcast.
But boy, one heck of a place to host an event around AI, though, I think, right? For a few days.
it's a wonderful, the weather's perfect. It's beautiful. It's a great place to go. I don't golf, but I heard the golfing over there is wonderful too, because we were over there last year for another conference, which leads me into, I just want to come at it. I've been thinking about a lot, since our last conversation and even this conversation, you're talking about a number of conferences. There are a lot of conferences. Everyone's putting together a lot of conferences. You, as someone who works on planning conferences and creating conferences, what do you think, or how do you think someone can choose which conference to go to? Because you talked about a number of conferences that are all wonderful, right? And I'm not trying to take away from any conference, but you have several conferences. There's other conferences from other agencies for similar or different products. What do you think, or is there any thought when you're putting the conferences together, what someone should do to evaluate which conferences they can go to? Because I know I'd love to go to them all, but I can't due to time, finance, and other reasons. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's, so I'm gonna explain 3 criteria that I think there are that somebody needs to use to evaluate whether they sponsor an event, attend an event, and I don't just mean this for our category, I mean for any category. But before I go there, I think one of the most important things that I think folks need to think about is aligning the content of an event with the context of why they're going, right? So, what we try to do with DCI is say, hey, if you want a Dynamics and Power Platform first event, if that's your context, right, then we've got all of the content for that at Community Summit North America. If you want a partner first event and you want to really kind of connect in with Microsoft, connect in with other partners, those sorts of things, okay, we've got that with BizApps Partner Summit, right, for your content and context. And then if you're contextually trying to figure out what's going on with AI, what's going on with Copilot, and start to put it to work for your business, then that's what we have with AI Copilot Summit North America. So even for our 3 kind of primary events, Brad, I guess I would say, we try to make sure that those don't trip over each other. So that if you've got a Dynamics first agenda and a Power Platform first agenda, go to Community Summit, right? If you've got an AI first agenda and a Copilot first agenda, go to AI Copilot Summit North America. Or if you're a partner and you're trying to figure out how to scale your practice by dazzling customers, come to the BizApps Partner Summit, right? So that's kind of our first thing, is say, hey, let's make sure we don't trip over ourselves, right, with how we do this. And then when it comes to somebody sort of trying to prioritize what they want to do, because people invest their time and their money to this stuff, right? And those are 2 of the most precious things we have in this world besides love, right? So when you're kind of stacking up on those 3 things, boy, you better make sure you're making the right decisions, right? And so what we say is, okay, it's about speakers, it's about sessions, and it's about networking, right? Those are the 3 big things that anybody should use to evaluate any event they go to. So from my perspective, I like to make sure that everything that we do is truly created as a community event, not just using the word community to make it sound sweet and charming, right? So our community events are literally driven by programming committees, and there's a call for speakers for the community to contribute to the content that we're building. So all of the speakers are actually chosen for community by community. And I'm a big kind of a hard ass on that one, right? Like nobody's allowed to come in and say, no, they get to be here because they're the most popular, or they're the neatest person in the world, or they've got a bajillion followers on YouTube, right? That has to be chosen by the community for the community. So that's a big part of it, is who are those speakers and what does that sort of stuff mean? The second part of it are the sessions. So what we try to do with any of the events, and I think this becomes really important for folks, again, as they're investing their time and their money, is to actually take a look at all of the sessions that are available at any event that you're going to and say, does that map to where I am in my journey, right? If I'm a user of D365 F&O, if I'm a user of CE/CRM, if I'm, early in the days of trying to figure out Dataverse and Power Platform and aligning it with Copilot Studio, right? Wherever I am in my journey, I have to sort of make sure that I'm aligning my journey to the paths that are available through all of the sessions that are at the event. And if you don't find that connection for yourself, don't go, right? And do me a favor, if you're looking at our stuff and you don't see it, say, John, that sucks, right? You need this sort of thing to help align with where my journey is. Because that is us using our two ears and our one mouth, right? So, which again, they're both kind of inextricably connected, right? Between the speakers and the sessions being driven by the programming committees, because that's what makes it for community by community in the life of it. The other thing, sort of underlining that part before I get to the networking, is being truthful to that term of community, right? So when you go to Community Summit North America, when you'll go to AI Copilot Summit North America, or even what we did with BizApps Partner Summit, what we really try to do is make sure that that framework of content that's being created is not created by two people on a whiteboard in a boardroom that think they know all the answers. It's really being built with people that are saying, no, this is what the reality is, so let's change that, let's shift this, let's build that. With Community Summit North America, for example, 85% of the 700 plus sessions that are running at that event are from community members, right? They're actually from partners and users, right? That are leading those content sessions. Only about 15% of the content is coming from Microsoft. That's a community event, right? Other organizations are actually calling their events community events, and I'm not throwing stones at them. I'm just saying it's whatever words you want to use, right? But I'm kind of a stickler to what the words mean and setting an expectation for the attendee to know, hey, if I'm going to a community event, it's actually delivered by the community. It's not delivered just by a platform provider like Microsoft or any other one. The final bit I think somebody needs to use to judge it is networking. And when I say networking, I don't just mean what sort of kegger are you going to that has, a live band, right? Like, I don't mean that sort of a networking, I mean, what are the
kegger? That's such a late, like 80s, early 90s term.
I also use pitch and Brad, right? So I use them both. But it made me lose my train of thought. That's a funny one. But the importance,
I'll make you lose it even more. Do you ever do any keg stands?
Dude, I've done beer bongs. I've done keg stands. I'm going to leave it there before I incriminate myself any further. But no, I graduated high school in 1989, and as Kid Rock said in that one song, my hair was long and my thoughts were short, right? I pretty much was that dude traveling around with the Grateful Dead actually at the time. But my, I think an important point on this is that third sort of thing that anybody needs to use when they're going to any event is, what does the networking mean? Is it networking that just gets the same people together every single year, and then it's like a cool clique kind of crowd and that kind of thing? Now, there's a spot for that, but that's probably not at a really big event. That's kind of at a small event, sort of thing that should happen. I think the networking that folks ought to look for, right, is, hey, is there a real openness to connecting with other people that are maybe smarter than you about certain things that can help you understand stuff? And then there are things that you're smart about that you can share with other people to help them out on different things, and then not have an agenda about it, right? Not have an agenda of, what have you done for me lately, right? Instead, it's, hey, let's just kind of shoot the breeze and hang out and figure out if this stuff makes sense. The other element of networking is fostering an environment that doesn't feel like a seventh grade dance, right? Remember that seventh grade dance where all the boys were on one side and all the girls were on the other side, and then you sort of wondered, golly, who's going to be the first one to go out on the dance floor? And then all of a sudden, Michael Jackson Thriller came on, and everybody was on the dance floor, right? It's not creating environments like that, and instead just trying to foster an environment where people feel super comfortable to shoot the breeze without trying to make it hokey, and I'm not a big fan of hokey myself. I'm a bigger fan of treating people like adults and letting them kind of create birds of a feather sort of a thing, that are very open to letting others come in. I've always used an expression in business, right? And I've always called it the cool table, right? And I always say, hey, listen, there's plenty of seats at the cool table, right? We're all sitting at the cool table. There's plenty of seats here, right? The one rule is, y'all got to be cool, right? And if you're not cool, your seat's going to get taken away, right? And you're not going to get a whole bunch of chances to not be cool. We might give you one chance to not be cool and then say, hey, you got to be cool. But then if you're not, your seat gets taken away for good. And that's because people don't want you to sit here anymore, right? So, I just think you foster an environment where y'all be cool, right? Like Frosty the Snowman, and that sort of thing. Folks, I think, find helpful and approachable.
Excellent. No, that's
Yeah,
some
very
great.
well.
It's a
Well
great
put.
perspective to look at. It's one of the things that I often hear asked is, what are some criteria? What should I look at when determining which conference to go to? And I think by you putting it with, the context of the content, the sessions, the speakers, and the networking, you can never undervalue the power of networking. And I had mentioned it before, and I always say a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to have a drink or someone's having an event afterwards, but I have met some great contacts at those events and have had some great business discussions and even formed business arrangements, engagements, partnerships, customers. I mean, anything that you could fashion in those environments where you have the opportunity to sit down and talk to someone and really talk to them. And I like the point that you put where it's not the stand up on stage, everything's going to be rosy and work perfectly. It's to be able to sit and talk to community members. And this is where I think, like, I'm a fan of the content by community members, because you get not only the session on how to use something potentially, for the sake of the conversation, but you can hear real world examples or someone that actually uses it and how they can implement it to give you more value for the session that you're attending, other than just something I could watch on YouTube as a.
Or even showing how are they using it from their perspective, and it gives you another view from an end user of using an application that you may end up taking back, or maybe you network with that speaker and gain that information and take it back. So there's a value in that. And being someone that's on the other end, where in the early days of working at end user, I went through those sessions and I learned a lot, and then brought it back and become successful. Who I was working for at that time. But there's great points. Great points.
Another thing that's on my mind about this, I just shoot from the hip, or as you say, I just dive into the pool. and some of these things I just wonder, and again, out of curiosity, and I'm sure others think of it too, is when it comes to the locations. All right, at these conferences, I understand venue size for a conference is important. But how do you determine the location? Is there any consideration for geographical location? How do you forecast a size to make sure that, again, it's a lot, oftentimes, I'm not certain, maybe you can inform us how far in advance you may have to reserve some of these venues so that you could estimate properly that you won't have something too large or too small. But what goes into choosing a location?
Yeah, it's both art and science, Brad. If I'm being honest, like some people will pretend like it's all art, other people will pretend like it's all science. It's not, right? What you need to do, well, I'll say what I've done for 25 years or so of creating events out there, and only 4 years in this community, right? But I've done sort of events all over the world, right, in different categories and stuff, primarily in the tech space. But the thing you always got to start with is data, right? So you've got to take a look at your all of your folks that are in your database. Like for us, it's all of the users of Microsoft business applications that we have in our database, and then you create quadrants, right? And it's essentially northeast, southeast, southwest, right? It's that kind of thing. Our 4 quadrants here in the Midwest, right? So we do that, and then we do essentially regression analysis based on over the last number of years, where's the highest proportion of individuals that have attended something like Community Summit North America. We then color them, right? We say, okay, this many were like D365 F&O, this many were D365 CE/CRM, this many were from GP, BC, right? That kind of thing. And we'll literally go through the analysis of who filled out what data when they registered for the year before, and then plot them on a map. And quite frankly, right, we've got graphics that we'll do some of this stuff with. Then what we do is we take a look at what where the biggest clusters are of people in each one of those, and we say, okay, what are the largest venues that we could utilize within a certain geography for an event that we would be creating, like a community summit North America, like we're doing with Copilot Summit North America. That's the real science part, right? And it actually takes a lot of time, and it's a heavy commitment to go through this process, right? So when we picked Charlotte, for example, to your point of what the timing looks like, that was about 60 days after I started here in 2020. So we picked Charlotte in December of 2020 for the event that we ran last year in 2023.
Wow.
We picked San Antonio that we're in this year in July of 2021, or like June, July of 2021, we signed the contract for this one. So you have to do this a few years in advance, right? When you're actually doing this sort of thing, if you're following a data-driven strategy to do it. If you're just kind of flying off the hip and saying, I want to do something in, Austin, Texas, because it's a hip spot to live right now and it's cool people and it's tech heavy, right? You might be able to pull something off and just say, hey, I want to do that. But I've been burned too many times in my career from working for organizations that did that or making some of those mistakes myself in the past, that I just really try to focus on that data first. So kind of starting with the science and building it out from there. One of the tough things is, and it's a very good problem to have, so please don't take it like I'm being whiny about it, right? But we've got a pretty big group of people that come to Community Summit North America, and I really try, and so does the team, right? Danielle Dunlap on the team who runs our operations and others on the team are wonderful about this. But we try to make sure that people don't feel like they are like this, right? That they're right next to each other if they're on the show floor or if they're in an education room or that type of thing. So we actually buy more real estate. We investigate more real estate at each venue that we do it at so that we can have wider aisles in the trade show or in the show floor and those sorts of things. Because I don't want to try to just set a perception of, oh my gosh, look how crowded Summit North America is. Boy, this must be the biggest event ever. Those things will prove themselves out just based on the people that attend, right? And those sorts of things. I don't need to set a phony perception of that. So we actually over purchase the real estate, like in the show floor environment, so people have more room to walk, right? People have more room to move around and that kind of thing. And so it becomes hard to find venues that enable us to do that, especially when you're having to book them out that far in advance. So we kind of fell in love with San Antonio, for example. Like I was saying back then in 21, we said, boy, we think San Antonio would be a really neat spot to do the event because, number one, it's got a really nice, I think Henry B. Gonzalez Convention Center where it's going to be. That's a really nice venue. There were spots to do pre-conferences, tons of education session rooms, and when you boil Summit down, right, the show floor is fantastic. It's a great place to connect with all the partners and that kind of thing, but it's an innovation, education, and training event first, right, with what we do with the event. So we had a kind of almost a record number of education rooms we could have at the event this year. So we said, let's just get them, right? Let's make it to where the community can have whatever sessions they want to be able to have in that environment. So that was a big requirement for us, right, as we were going through that process to figure it out. And I think that the third one is, so it's using the data, then it's using the data of the given environments or given venues that we can host the event at in each city. And then the third one is, okay, now let's make sure the place doesn't suck. Right. And part of that is, hey, what's around the place? Are there places where, if I'm a partner and I want to take some users out for a drink somewhere or dinner somewhere, those sorts of things are available spots to be able to do that. If folks want to have, like Power GP Online every year does their big Power GP party, right? Is there going to be a spot for those folks to do that here, right? And we like to look out for people with that kind of thing, right? Say, hey, that we don't make any money on their party, right? But I want to try to help them out because that's a big important thing for them and for the community and that kind of stuff. So we look for things like that to try to help out, and the like. So the other thing is, like, just this week I went to poor me, right? I had to go to San Diego, California during the summer.
Rough.
Yeah, and when I live in Scottsdale where it's 100 million gajillion degrees, right? I got to go to San Diego where it was like 70, and I'm like, God's country kind of thing, right? As I walk off the plane and I feel that weather. But I kid about it, but it's a commitment, right? For me as the CEO of the company, I want to go look, right? And I want to make sure that this is going to be right for the community and that kind of stuff. Hey, is there enough here? Is it the right environment? Is it that sort of thing? So I always make a commitment to do that in any venue that we're going to go to, because I want to be able to look somebody in the eye and say, no, we actually picked this for these reasons, right? Hey, geographically, it worked for where a lot of folks, where it could be easy for people to get into. Boy, it had a number of rooms for the right sessions. And you know what? I don't think it sucks, right? I think it's a good spot. I think it's up to speed for what you're looking for and what the community's looking for. So sorry to drone on it, guys, but I think it's an important bit.
It is so awesome to see it in insight, you sharing that, because it really puts things into perspective, because I've been going to dynamic communities events for a long time, and I had a chance to put one together out of this country, and then seeing it and hearing it from you and how these things get put together, it's incredible to hear it directly from you after all these years, to see how this is all put together. So
no, it is
thank you.
impressive.
Yeah.
It's important. It's impressive. It's nice to see the thought that goes into it, because as you had mentioned, it's 3 years out is quite a bit of time to start planning for an event. So that's extremely important. And I'm looking forward to going to San Antonio. So
Yeah, me too.
So I'll tell you just a little thing on San Antonio. Is funny. I had been there like a couple of times for business stuff, like for work stuff, like meeting with folks there. But it was years ago, right? It was like a dozen years ago, something like that. And there were 2 times that I got to go to San Antonio for something super fun. And it's the NCAA Final Four basketball championships, right? And so I got to go to San Antonio twice for those back in an old job I used to have, where the hotshot that I reported to would say, hey, that's going to be our big customer thing that we do every year. And they invite me to go, right? So I could go too. And it was like awesome, like this Riverwalk environment, super neat. And you're right next to the Alamo. And like there's just kind of a lot to do. And it's this almost little oasis in that area that I thought was just super neat. And so I'm excited for everybody in the community that hasn't gotten a chance to see San Antonio before to sort of check it out, right? And we're doing this neat thing on Wednesday night. I didn't make this name up, but I think we're calling it the Fiesta on the Riverwalk or something like that on Wednesday night. But it's kind of the big get together for the whole community, right? And I like to support local folks in each one of the cities that we bring Summit North America to. So we've got a local band that's going to be playing, right? So we don't need to go out and spend bajillion dollars to get some 1980s has been like Casey and the Sunshine Band or something like that to come to our events, right? We like to I like to invest in like local talent. Hey, we're going to be in your city. You're a local band. You do stuff. Why don't you come play here? I did it in Charlotte last year as well with a couple of guys playing guitar that were on the Legend stage and stuff. So we're going to do that thing, but it's going to be right on that Riverwalk area. So it's kind of an iconic scene, and everybody that's going to be there can kind of experience that if they've never experienced it before. So excited for that too.
No, I'm looking forward to it. It's and the Alamo is nearby, you said?
It's literally walking distance, Brad.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're going there, Brad. We're going there. We're going to walk.
Definitely. I didn't have the opportunity to look. I knew about the Riverwalk. I heard about the Riverwalk, heard about the great sessions. If the Alamo is within walking distance, I'm definitely allocating some time. I'll have to cut out or even stay an extra day or so I can get in some sightseeing and some touring.
It's worth checking out for sure. It's a historic spot for this country and for the role that this country plays in this part of the world. So I think it's an important thing for everybody to check out.
No, I think the history is important to learn from and to learn about and get a better understanding of the foundation of the country and where we started, where we came from, and where we're going. Speaking back to Community Summit, not to go on too much, and so you said Dynamics and Power Platform. There's several tracks within Community Summit. What are the tracks that you have within it this year?
Yeah, so we've done a little bit of an expansion this year on a few different tracks, but our primary tracks are aligned with each Dynamics and D365 ERP platform, right? So D365 F&O or AX, right? Now today it's a little bit more finance and supply chain management, right? So F/SCM, but I think everybody kind of calls it different stuff. Essentially, the largest enterprise, sort of resource planning stuff out there. So we've got about 150, 160 or so sessions for F&O, and each one of the different tracks for the major ERPs and CECRM have between 100 and 125 sessions each, right? With each one, but D365 F&O or FSCM, Business Central, so D365 Business Central, Dynamics GP, and then CECRM, all under sort of the Dynamics umbrella. There's also still some sessions for folks that are using SL, right, and some of the older platforms, even though those have gotten less and less and less every year, just because there's less folks using them, right? We've got some incredible sessions around Power Platform, and what we've really seen is this massive integration between Power Platform and CECRM. So we've just got some incredible sessions about how to lever Power Platform within your Dynamics environments with CECRM, but also with each one of the ERP platforms, and then of course some standalone stuff that's around Power Platform, which are always just a big hit. We've got a Copilot track this year, but the Copilot track a lot of times will also overlap with other Dynamics 365 and Dynamics sessions or CECRM sessions, right? Because it'll be Copilot for sales, right? Or Copilot for bank reconciliation in Business Central, right? Or those sorts of things. So we really try to make it kind of how-to tutorial around utilizing the emerging platforms like Copilot. We have some sessions this year around Copilot Studio, which is for anybody who hasn't started to play around with Copilot Studio, I highly recommend it, right? Because it's essentially a SaaS platform that enables you to roll your own Copilots, right, and start to play with them and put them to work for your business. And it's pretty fun, right? It's pretty cool. It's significantly less risky than using like the OpenAI Azure Studio to do your stuff, because all the Copilot Studio stuff is more built with guardrails around it, right, as a SaaS platform. So we'll have some sessions there running through the program, featuring some Microsoft folks and community folks, obviously. We've got a Fabric track this year because we asked the question to the community saying, hey, are you trying to figure out this data stuff and what it means and all that sort of thing? And I said, should we have cloud databases? What the heck is a cloud data lakehouse? Like people are asking some of those questions. And so a great community person, Pablo Moreno, leading a lot of that programming for us and helping out and organizing, kind of a smaller scale programming community to help craft some of those sessions and stuff. Those are some of the primary ones, right? The primary ones that are really Dynamics first, Power Platform first, and then sprinkling of those other systems that are kind of pervading, right? The users that are out there, because you're getting finance, folks in finance, for example, that are, in F&O or BC or something like that, and all of a sudden now they're trying to do, like I said before, bank reconciliation, and now trying to utilize generative AI to create that sort of environment with the Copilots that are built for the platforms. People are trying to figure out, I love the idea, right? That would take a ton of time out of my day. Okay, how do I do that, right? So we're trying to help folks have some of that stuff built in here. Some great Academy classes this year. Golly, we got 35 or so Academy classes that are running this year, maybe 37 now. But they sort of frame around those same topics or segments, Brad and Kris. So, D365 F&O, BC, Dynamics GP, right? And others. We've got 2 Fabric Academy classes this year that are going on too, so that we're excited for those. And then some just folks doing some sessions around the AI stuff that are very hands-on, like Prashant Boyer, who's a fantastic, Microsoft AI MVP and just great person out there in the community. But he's doing a couple of academy classes on that are really going to be about rolling your sleeves up and literally demoing within the context of Copilot Studio with live data, DMZ data, right? But live data that going to be building some copilots around and stuff to really just take it from the clouds and the hyperbole and the hype and the excitement around all that stuff to, okay, and if you're going to do it yourself, right, here's how you got to do it. And here's some lessons learned and ideas on how to approach it. So that's kind of the big stuff.
No, there's a
Fantastic.
lot. There's a lot that sounds fantastic. There's a lot of information, and I encourage everyone to go and to pay attention to the session so they can plan properly. I have another question that's extremely important, and those that know when I talk about conferences and these types of things, it's important to me. And Kris will know what I'm going to ask just because he knows me well enough. We had the opportunity to spend some time together recently. Food. How do you come up and determine the food? Now, keep in mind, I understand, I'll be the first one to say, I understand if you have a conference where there's, I think Summit last year had 4,000, 6,000 people, something like that, or, a large number of people. It's very difficult to accommodate food at the same time for 4,000 people, in addition to those that may have special dietary requirements as well, to put all of that together. So keeping all of that in mind, it's one of those things that come to me. And I know that a pot of coffee costs $100, where I could just walk down the street.
and it ain't Pete's or Starbucks, man. Right?
No, I understand. I laugh with that, but I just want to put some of that just in perspective for when I ask the question, and those that may listen or those that I talk to, is those that when you start talking about the food, you have to keep in mind that at some of these venues, they're not giving you a discounted rate on the coffee, for example. They're actually surcharging you significantly because they have those extra special classified plastic containers that they have to give you the coffee in.
The double secret probation, containers. Yeah, it's so. Guess what the biggest expense is for an event the scale of Community Summit North America?
Food.
Yep. So it's literally the biggest expense. Guess what the inflation has been against food since I took this job? With the
40%.
inflation rate has grown, how much more food costs, right? So inflation rate on food costs since 2020 when I took this job.
I know the grocery store, the inflation's quite, and so you're not playing grocery store rate. So I would say inflation on the conference food rate or just the regular grocery rate?
I don't care which one you want to choose, Brad.
I would say 50%.
I'd say 300%.
Yeah. So if you look at the literal increase of a muffin at a conference, right? For a single muffin at a conference in 2020 to what it costs today, it'll vary a little bit, but it's between 45 and 50% more than it was at that point, right?
Wow.
So
you're right, Kris.
I don't know why I fist pumped that, because that's not fist pumped.
Kris just had to be right. He's all excited the muffin's 50% more. So don't waste those muffins, Kris.
So when you consider that premise, right, and then you extrapolate that out to, like, this year we're expecting between 5,000 and 5,500 folks, right, at Community Summit North America. So when you look at that number in an individual basis, you're going to go, well, I really want the muffin. So, if it cost, $5 before and it cost, whatever, $8 now, I'm going to buy it because I want that. But that extra $3 per muffin, right, when you extrapolate that out to 5,000, 5,500 people, and then you look at it for a slice of bacon, for a piece of sausage, for some scrambled eggs, for a sandwich in a box, right? For any of those types of things, those numbers become really, really big, right? They do. And what I have really tried to do, and I get a lot of heat from this from the private equity firm that owns our company, right? Because we're owned by a private equity firm. This is not an association or a 501c3. This is a for-profit business that's owned by a private equity firm, right? So I get a lot of heat from our owners, right, to say, John, you should increase that price. You should increase this price. That price should be this. How can you stomach those costs? So I can stomach them because I'm the CEO of the business. right? And I'm going to make the decisions on how we're going to do this sort of thing. You can have influence in that sort of stuff, but we are not going to raise the prices to attend Summit North America at the same rate that that inflation is rising for food. Now, if you look at many conferences out there in the world, they not only increase by way of what their cost structures are against food, they have percentages built on top of that, right? So that they're driving more and more profitability based on per attendee or per sponsor that they have at an event. I made a really hard decision in 2021 when we were in Houston, and I've stayed true to that decision, that we will increase prices at no more than 1/3 of the inflation rate. So if the inflation rate is running at 45 to 55%, right, I will only increase my rates by a maximum of 1/3 of that over the years for people to attend the event, because it's not fair for people that are, in some cases, a lot of people taking this money out of their own pocket, right, to come to Community Summit North America if their company won't pay for it for them to come. It's not fair for them to have that same scale of increase to the pricing to go to the event. So that's a big part of it, right? And I'm not looking for slaps on the back or any of that kind of stuff. This is just the way I run a business, right, for this stuff, because I think it's important for the community to be able to have a spot like this to gather and do those things, right? Meet the speakers, go to the sessions, do the networking, right? That kind of stuff. So that's been a big thing for us, is how do we manage the cost of the food in this environment, but still make it affordable for people to come to the event. So that's one thing. Second thing is picking the food itself. I mentioned that I was just at the San Diego venue, right, that we're going to be hosting AI Copilot Summit North America at. I went and ate the food. Right, I literally went. I met the chef at the venue. I ate the food. I ate 2 meals there, so that I could see how it was. I ate kind of a sandwich kind of meal, and then I had like a dinner kind of a meal. Right, it was a nicer lunch. Right, it wasn't dinner, but I ate both of those things so I could see how they tasted. Because if they taste like crap, right, I was going to fight back to those people and say, okay, you're charging me this money. I need something that's going to taste good for people that are coming to the event. Now, I don't know that everybody does this sort of thing, right? But I've done this stuff for a little while. So I like to go and try it, because then I can actually look somebody in the eye and say, oh, I ate the turkey ham sandwich and I thought it tasted pretty good. Well, they can say mine had stale bread, and I'll say I'm sorry, right, if it did, but I actually tried it and it tasted okay. It doesn't mean that everything is going to be perfect every time with the type of food that's there, and sometimes you run out of food, and that's because somebody comes in and they eat like 3 times the amount that you thought a single person would eat, right? And that kind of thing. And those things happen in an event environment. So we normally try to have between 23 and 27% excess food when we run an event, so that if there is somebody that comes and eat 3 times the amount, somebody else isn't starving, right? So that's kind of how we do it, Brad. I try to eat the stuff to make sure it doesn't suck, right? Because that kind of falls under that other thing we talked about, is making sure the venue doesn't suck, right? Is trying to do that. Doesn't always work out perfect, right? But we try really hard to at least make it as at least make it good, right? As my dad always says, perfection is a myth, but the path to perfection is divinity. So Johnny, stay on the frickin' path, right? Is what he'd always tell me when I was a kid, and I continue to try to do that with work.
No, that's a great approach. It's a great way to have it, as you said, just so that something doesn't suck. I call it the old lead from the front, and don't ask somebody to do something you wouldn't do yourself. So if I'm going to get out there and eat that sandwich, at least I'm not having something different and you having, lesser quality or something that's not good. That goes to me, I take that everywhere in life, not just, the topic of food. It's, I'm a big believer of that whole lead from the front type strategy, and don't ask somebody to do something you wouldn't or haven't done yourself as well. Sometimes you can't always go up to that. So that's good. No, it's some great insight. See, all these inside conference questions that I have that I finally get to have answered. I appreciate it. And then also with Community Summits this October 13th to 17th in San Antonio, Texas, there are pre-conference workshops available that are outside of the conference, and there's an additional charge for those, but those there's some great sessions. You mentioned there's 35 of them, great presenters or instructors. I don't even know what you call them. See, I'm so bad with this stuff. You have
I always call them instructors for academy classes, because you're actually getting continuing professional education credits from those sessions that are all certified, right? So so I always like to refer to those as instructors, and people that are leading sessions as session leaders, right? And just to make it kind of simple, but yeah, because you have certified CPEs that you get with the academy classes, kind of from a respect perspective to the individual, I like to call them instructors. And then for the community that's, paying money to get those CPEs and those sorts of things, kind of want to be taught by an instructor, right? When I'm going to a class.
No, that's good. So you have some great instructors with those academy classes. There's a wide range of them. I looked at the list, which is before. Some are 2 days, some are 1 day. And then also you have the 13th and 17th. I also looked at all of those sessions. It's packed full. I've already started planning, as we talked about and had the conversation, the sessions that I would like to attend, because I do not want to show up and decide, where am I going to go now? It's very difficult to plan on the fly in some of these, because there's a lot going on, and I say that with positivity. There's a lot of opportunity, a lot of people to speak with, a lot of great sessions to see, and at least want to have an idea of where I would like to go. Another question on the conference: are any of the sessions going to be recorded this year?
Yeah, so we are going to be recording about 25% of the sessions this year. So it's kind of the same amount we did last year. And then all of those will be made available. They'll go through post-production editing and then be available on dynamicscommunities.com. So that's it's a pretty big expense, right? To record those things and then do the post-production editing. Because what we heard from folks the first year we tried to do this was, golly, that sounds like crap, right? When you recorded it and all that. Or you have people that do this when they're on stage, right? And they come out of the view of the camera, and they come back into the view of the camera, and they come over on this side, right? So we've tried to invest a little bit more in the sound quality and some of the video quality and those sorts of things that we can have there. And then what we did was had the programming committees, for the most part, the programming committees kind of earmark sessions. Hey, that one had a lot of, a similarly themed event or session last year had a very big crowd at it, so let's record that one this year so we can get it out to more people, right? Year over year. And then a few on like hey, these are kind of front seat of the roller coaster sessions that if you couldn't come to Summit North America, boy, be good to decentralize that to more people and that kind of thing. So that's kind of the flow of how we do those. I'd love to record all of them, but then I wouldn't be able to pay people to do their jobs, right? Because it costs so much darn money to record all that stuff. So we look at all of that as an investment in the community when we do it. So there's no like sponsorship stuff around those things or any of that type of stuff, right? It's really just an investment in the community for that. It's also an investment in the speakers that are a part of the program, because we all work our butts off every single day, right? So what I try to do with doing those recordings is, hey, not everybody has the dough to record themselves, doing a session, leading a session, do some post-production editing on it, and have something that looks professional, right? And that kind of thing. So it's a little bit of a way to thank the speakers for all of their effort and energy that they put into the community as well.
No, it's great. It's good to know. It also is going to be helpful for me if something's recorded. I know I may have the chance to watch it later if I have a conflicting session that I would like to attend, not to take away from those that are recorded, because it's also important to see those in person sometimes, because you can interact with the session leader as well as the other participants in the room. It goes back to that whole networking. You can network with the session leaders as well as the individuals in the room, which is important.
Nail it, Brad.
Well, John, yes.
I was just going to mention one other thing there. You mentioned like the planning that you were doing and that sort of stuff for the sessions. Next week, so the end of August timeframe, beginning of September timeframe, we're doing something brand new this year for the community that was feedback that we heard last year.
That's cool.
We've created a show guide this year. So it's a digital show guide that you can come and download. It's just like an interactive PDF kind of a piece, right? But it starts off, get my fat head on there, right? Doing a little intro thing at the beginning. So whatever. I just try to tell everybody what to expect and that sort of thing. But then from there, it goes in and it actually it outlines each one of the different sessions for each one of the different user groups. So every single session, all 700 sessions, has a specific section in the show guide, so you can actually go in and pick and choose. It's totally interactive, so you can click on it and go directly to the session description and that kind of thing on the website. And it shows the time that session is running, the title of the session, as well as the room. So so a lot of folks will be using the app when they're on site and all that type of thing, but to have something like this as a planner before you're going to the event, it's really kind of powerful. It also shows every single one of the speakers. So golly, you guys are both speaking, right? So 500 plus speakers, 600 speakers that we have at the event. And I did them this year because I'm a geek, right? I did them in almost a yearbook fashion, right? So as you're going through the digital show guide, it almost looks like you're looking at a yearbook with all the different speakers with their pictures and that kind of thing. And so you can actually tap on any one of the speakers, go directly to their profile on the Summit site and stuff. So kind of love that, Rex. It celebrates everybody in the community and such. And then around the areas where we did each one of the different product group, like user group sessions, so D365 F&O and BC, where it lists out all of the different sessions with the titles and the room numbers and such. A couple of folks in the community raised their hand and said, hey, John, I'll write a little what to expect article to go along with this. So like Crystal Ahrens did a piece for D365 F&O, and Steve Chinsky did a piece for Business Central, and Carrie Hadley did a piece for Dynamics GP, and Kylie Kaiser did a piece for CECRM and stuff. So it's really neat. Pablo Moreno did a piece for F&O, and it's a pretty neat kind of thing, right? To have everybody sort of sharing some of their ideas. Sean Dorward did one for kind of what to expect on the AI Copilot side and that kind of thing. So you sort of see what to expect from folks. Then you get to see all of the sessions that are going to be there, and we also include all of the academy classes as well. So so pretty neat way for everybody to spend that like month or whatever it is before Summit. Hey, I want to plan this stuff. Golly, I don't want to be on my phone. Okay, now I got this cool kind of organized PDF document where I can go through and plan and do that kind of thing. So
I did see the demo on that. That was actually really cool. So I'm actually really excited about that.
I'm excited. I'm excited for that too. I think it is a good way. I mean, the planning, don't underestimate the importance of planning.
Yes.
And it's another step for you to get the most out of it. I'm one that says I've been going to this for a long time. This is one of those conferences that if you didn't have a good time, you did something wrong. And what I mean by good time is, if you can't go up to these things, if you don't plan before you go up to it, you have no one else to blame but yourself, not to be cruel or harsh on some of these words, but you get, sometimes with these conferences, you get out what you put into them. There's plenty of opportunity to network, plenty of opportunity to learn, plenty of opportunity to share. There's plenty of opportunity to eat and plenty of opportunity to do other things. So I'm looking forward to seeing the digital guide. Will that digital guide be available for everybody or only those that are registered for the conference?
So everybody that's registered for the conference will receive an email that'll come from our team, and it'll have a direct link to click on it. You can go, you'll go directly to the spot where you can download the show guide. If somebody is not registered for the event, they will have the ability to like put in their registration information, not buy a pass to the event, but put their registration information in, like their name and their email address and stuff, and be able to download it. But it's really meant for attendees, for the users that are attending the event. And then other folks that are maybe considering, hey, do I go to the event or do I not go to the event? Or maybe like you said before, Brad, they're trying to figure out, hey, is this an event I want to go to? They can download that and check it out and see if it makes sense. And then what we try to do with those people, we have somebody that joined our team a little bit earlier this year called Joanne Talia, and she's leading our attendee success. So everybody who downloads one of those that isn't already registered, that name will go over to Joanne. Joanne will send them a personal email, not like a prefab, kind of everybody gets the same email sort of thing. Joanne will send them an email. Say you downloaded the digital guide. If you're interested in going to Summit North America, let me work with you to get the best deal, right, to attend the event. So so that's kind of the process that we go through for it, but really kind of meant for people that are coming to the event. So, hey, give you a little bit of a hand, right? To your point, Brad, plan it out a little bit.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it. I'm also looking forward to seeing you in October. I think we'll have to have a drink together. Kris will have to see. We'll have some whiskeys.
We'll have some whiskeys.
I'm not saying the number, but we'll definitely need to have one, maybe two, and have a drink of water while we're there. Well, John, we appreciate you taking the time to speak with us this afternoon. As you had mentioned, and how I firmly believe, time truly is the currency of life. Once you spend it, you can't get it back. So we both value and appreciate the amount of time that people speaking with us to share their thoughts, insights, and information, because like I said, this last hour that you spoke with us, you don't get it back.
Yeah. And just so, John, I do appreciate the insight you've given. I think it holds a lot of value hearing it directly from you, and the amount of work that you and the team have put together, keeping this community going. And I love seeing it. I like I said, I've been going to this community event for a long time, and seeing it come back stronger than ever. I'm super excited. So I'm super excited to see everybody again here in San Antonio.
Oh, I am too. And we do understand, as Kris had mentioned, there's a team of people that put this together. You do a great job as a CEO, but I get to interact with a lot of the members of your team as well, and they all do a great job, and they've all been very responsive to some of the inquiries I've had as well too. So we appreciate the entire team for putting this together, because I know I have a blast every time I go, and I get so much out of it. So I do appreciate it.
Those words mean a ton to me, and they mean a ton to the team, gang. So thank you very much, Kris and Brad. And I also would love to just maybe throw a little wrinkle in here on what you guys just said, because the role that you both play in the community is extremely important in keeping everybody together and helping to decentralize the intelligence that everybody has here, so that we can all do our jobs better, we can all get along a little bit more, and we can all continue to do great stuff. So thank you both for the roles that you play, and I am looking forward to doing a little cheers with both of you when we're at Community Summit North America.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you soon. All right.
Bye,
ciao,
guys.
ciao.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kris, for your time for another episode of In the Dynamics Corner Chair. And thank you to our guests for participating.
Thank you, Brad, for your time. It is a wonderful episode of Dynamics Corner Chair. I would also like to thank our guests for joining us. Thank you for all of our listeners tuning in as well. You can find Brad at developerlife.com. That is DVLPRLIFE.com. And you can interact with them via Twitter, DVLPRLIFE. You can also find me at matalino.io, MATALINO.io. And my Twitter handle is Matalino16. And you can see those links down below in the show notes. Again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, and take care.